What's the best thing to do for a beginner to get into computer programming? That's a good question, and it kind of changes. Lex Friedman also asked me about that when I was on a show. He's a big programmer, and he just recently had John Carmack on a show. So if you have some time, Carmack broke my record. I thought it would stand for a while. I was on Lex for over 5 hours, and Carmack was there for 5.5, and I suspect they probably went for over 6 with editing. And I mean, but it's Carmack. He's like a living legend, and he's also one of the best programmers in the world. So it's always fun to kind of get his perspective of what's a good programming language or not. So in my view, it depends on your age and your motivation for when you think about what's the best option for doing a programming language, writing something in a programming language. Certainly, there are some basic principles of computer science that you're eventually going to have to learn if you desire to be effective. Data structures, algorithms, concepts of like how to do test-driven development, learning how to do a version control system, working with a command line. These are all tools of the trade. Building and configuring your IDE and getting a proper development workflow, working with a debugger real time, quality assurance things like linters and so forth. But the core of it is saying, well, what language can you learn that doesn't get in the way of being able to do interesting things? And it used to be that in computer programming pedagogy, it was, well, we're going to teach you a structured language that shows you the nuances of everything. And like Java or C++ or C or Lisp. And it really gets deep. And then there's another school that said, well, we're going to teach you a language that allows you to do things very quickly. Something that you're instantly you're instantly doing stuff like shell scripting or Python or JavaScript, where you have a lot of options and it's very easy to write things, do things, build things, and you get it done. I think that it's probably a good idea to learn Python or JavaScript as your first language, and just start with a collection of milestones. So projects of things you want to do and want to accomplish, and see if that inspires you enough to be able to then get to the next level of learning an actual full grade language like a C or a C++ or a Java or so forth. There's a great all-inclusive specialization on Coursera on Python 3, which basically covers everything to get you started. And there's a lot of great books from No Starch Press that have things that teach you how to automate stuff and so forth with Python. And that's a very powerful language for web scraping, data science, AI, and just thinking in code in that respect. And professionals use it, beginners use it, and it kind of gets you started. Now, you'll develop a lot of bad habits if all you do is just play around with Python, and you'll be a little challenged when you're dealing with meta programming or dealing with types or these types of things. So it is probably pretty important to have a plan for how you go beyond that. And in particular, this is why I'm a little bit more biased to the JavaScript TypeScript world, because at least it's more structured in that respect. And it's a bigger ecosystem, but Python's quite powerful. So I'd start there, and the pedagogy is phenomenal in that respect. And there's lots of good things. Thank you from African Union Shield Foundation, Project Shield, me and James C. Yeah, I met with a very interesting man named James who showed me his birth certificate, told me it took him 2 years to get a birth certificate. It's from Liberia. And he happened to show up for crypto, and we had a lovely conversation about identity. And I referred him to the Africa Credential Alliance and to John O'Connor. It just was a great case study in how hard it is to get an ID and get economic identity if the culture you're from doesn't have good infrastructure for that. So hopefully we can find a way to collaborate and do something.